I'm Denyse Ritchie. I'm a teacher, teacher trainer and principal of the THRASS Institute. I've been very fortunate this year that I've been made the Chair of Literacy at Murdoch University and a Fellow. This has been fantastic for me because they've recognised the work that I've done over the years with THRASS, and THRASS is a process that I put together, or it's a teaching pedagogy that I put together to work with children that were struggling with reading and writing. The THRASS Institute is actually a teacher training institute. It was started because I firmly believe that many children are failing in literacy in our schools because teachers do not have the knowledge and understanding that they should have in how to teach foundational literacy. That is, the skills that are necessary to build reading and writing. I came upon this because I was working with children that were struggling with reading and writing, and I found that these children all had one thing in common. They would write, or their misspellings were always the same. They struggled on the same words, they struggled on sight words, and I thought, why is it that we have the same children in our classes, doesn't matter which country we're in, what school we're in, but actually make the same errors all the time? So I took this information and I worked on it for a couple of years, and I gave a paper in the UK, and there I met my co-author and co-developer of THRASS, Alan Davis, and we both put our work together, and that's how THRASS came about. THRASS is a teaching pedagogy. It's a way that teachers are able to teach children about the phonics of English. One of the big problems that we have in our schools today is the way that phonics is actually taught. And my very early years in teaching literacy was teaching children that the letter A makes the sound a, like in cat. And I did that for many years. I also taught that in teacher training. But what I actually found is that didn't work for many, many children. Those children who overlooked that were able to read words like was and ball and so forth. But those children who applied that information were actually the children who became my strugglers in my classroom. So I'd get children who'd get to a word like was and they'd read it as was, or they'd write it as WOZ. And I thought, how come these children are all doing exactly the same behaviour? Then it occurred to me, and it now sort of seems incredulous that it took so long, but it occurred to me that these children were actually applying the teaching that I was giving them to their everyday work. So here was they doing what they were supposed to be doing and applying their phonics that I had taught them to their everyday work. And that was actually causing them to struggle. So I looked at this and thought, well, why is it that we have these children that struggle this way? And when we started to put English together as a language and we started to look at all the different spelling choices that we had for a sound, all of a sudden it started to make a lot of sense to me as a teacher of where we had gone wrong in our teaching, but also what we needed to do to actually challenge that teaching and to change that teaching so that children were able to understand English as a language and to be able to understand what we call the orthographic mapping of English. And that is how speech sounds are written. So that if I see that in English, yes, we do have a letter A, but the sound A is only one sound that it will make. It can make the sound R in class and glass and fast and last. It can make the sound O in was and what and squash and so forth. It can make OR in words like ball and fall and water, etc. So being able to see that English letters don't have a sound or don't represent a sound, but were actually used in context to represent sounds made a big change to my teaching. I then looked at a lot of the other facets that we've taught in the past about phonics, and I found that a lot of the phonics teaching that we had been doing over the years was actually what was actually causing children to have literacy difficulties. It's also the reason why we have this continuous phonics versus whole language debate. And phonics keeps coming up every X amount of years. People say we have to do phonics, and then we employ phonics in our teaching, and then we have to change and we're not doing phonics anymore. And why? Because it's not working. It's actually not that phonics doesn't work, it's actually the way that we teach phonics that doesn't work. So for me, starting up what we did with THRASS, the most important part of THRASS is actually teacher training. That is developing teachers' knowledge and understanding of the phonics system of English. That is, that in English we have these 44 sounds, we have an alphabet with 26 letters, and these 26 letters are used to represent those 44 sounds. On understanding that and understanding what consonants and vowels are and the correct understanding of that terminology, changed around my teaching, and I know that it's actually changed around many, many teachers teaching from that time. Some people ask me how THRASS compares to phonics. THRASS actually is phonics, but THRASS is real phonics. So when we talk about a phonic approach, there's a very big difference. A phonic approach is where we teach one symbol for one sound. English is actually not a phonic language. It's actually a phonics language, meaning that we use these 26 symbols that we have. And those 26 symbols are used either singularly, which we call graphs, or in pairs that we call digraphs, or in groups of 3s and 4s, which we call trigraphs and quadgraphs. Now, understanding real phonics, that is, that English is not a one letter makes one sound process, is actually what we need to have in our schools, because then children understand how phonics works in reading and writing. So that if I'm able to say to a child today, we might be wanting to do the word how, because in math we might be doing how many. I can then say to my children, we want to do the word how. We can hear two sounds, and ow. If I'm just teaching you 26 letters and 26 sounds, there's no ow, because English has got 44 sounds. So then how do I deal with that sound ow with my children? It's not using the letters ot work to make the sound ow, because if I go her ot work, I'm going to get her ot work. I actually need to know that there's two speech sounds. There's and ow. And that's where THRASS is different. THRASS says letters are not sounds. Letters are used to represent sounds, and those letters are used in words, and we have to look for those patterns. And as children are encouraged to look for those patterns right from the very beginning, in their environmental print, in their books that we share with them and so forth, and then children can quickly understand how the phonics system of English works for reading and writing. So if they do want to go and write a word like how, or say we take it into house, they can say, oh, I can hear three speech sounds, ow and s. And using our THRASS chart, they're able then to go to three distinct boxes on the chart. They're able to go to the box, and obviously there's only one choice in there at the moment, but which is the letter H making the sound. That's great, so that matches the sound and the spelling choice. Then they can go down to the owl box. Now, there might be there is two spelling choices in the owl box. They have to make a decision which one it is, but that's our job as a teacher to teach them. But when they're just making this decision on their own, even if they decide to do OW, it means that they've actually made a real choice for the sound ow. And that's the importance of THRASS. That is the importance of us being able to teach our children real phonics from the very beginning.